Greetings and welcome to Mount Olympus. I am Hercules Invictus, and today on THEOSOPHIA, I'm proud to announce guest host Lynne Salomon Miceli. Greetings, Lynne. How are you?
Good. Thank you. Thank you, Hercules. And my guest tonight is Keith Clark, who is an expert on ITC, and we'll come back to that in a minute. For a very, very brief explanation of ITC, instrumental transcommunication, it's using technology to communicate with the world beyond. But I'm going to just backtrack a moment and say that I am, as Hercules said, Lynne Miceli, and I'm the director of the ARE of New York Virtual Center, which is based on the work of Edgar Cayce, the American mystic and psychic, who lived from 1877 to 1945. ARE stands for Association for Research and Enlightenment. And Cayce was, as I said, an American psychic who did over 14,000 readings that were taken down by a stenographer on things like health, reincarnation, Atlantis, meditation, dreams, and the afterlife. And that kind of brings us to our topic tonight. So Keith, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Lynne.
Keith Clark started his paranormal journey in 2005 when he saw the movie White Noise. And it inspired him to start experimenting in the field of instrumental transcommunication. His experiments resulted in spirit voices on the radio, spirit faces in sound, using spectrographs, and spirit pictures and voices in various other forms of digital media. Keith is a member of the Paranormal team, and that's like paranormal, but with a V, Paranormal, an online community dedicated to the collection, preservation, and sharing of paranormal information. The team members work on advanced research involving electronics and software with the goal of real-time communication with the spirit world that is sustainable and can be ongoing. Keith started live streaming paranormal experiments to the internet in 2008, and today he has a site with up to 10 live real-time streams that you can go and check out if you so wish. His specialties are live streaming, radio experiments, his historical knowledge of instrumental transcommunication, which we'll get into, and being of support to the paranormal community. So I gave a very brief explanation, but Keith, could you explain instrumental transcommunication a little bit more?
Certainly. Thank you for the intro, Lynne. I appreciate it. So instrumental transcommunication, as you indicated, is the communication. From here forward, I'll use the term spirits, as in spirit people, or as in people that are discarnate, don't have a body that we can see in this physical dimension. We'll generally refer to them as spirit. Instrumental transcommunication is a term that is used to basically say communicating with spirit using electronics. It started out as EVP, which is electronic voice phenomena. So that's the first thing that was discovered. I can explain it in the sense that it is the voice of discarnate spirits. So it is, if you were to take a recorder and you were to be in an empty room or an empty house or a quiet location, and you started the recorder and you asked questions to these invisible spirit communicators, you would be able to receive replies. And a lot of people have been doing that since 1959, though it's still not publicly very well known by the paranormal community, which is a lot broader than instrumental transcommunication. I think the main difference with instrumental transcommunication is we already are well aware through our experimentation and the history that communication with spirits is not only possible, it happens every day. And that's why the name of our website, Paranormal, is actually a play on words, and it means to be normal. So in short, this is just people, it's usually people wanting to communicate with their loved ones that have passed.
And could you tell us a little bit about the pioneers of ITC and what they did?
I'll be happy to. That's actually in the presentation that we can show here in a couple minutes. Essentially, there was a gentleman named Friedrich Jürgensen around 1959. He liked to record bird voices. So he would sit outside in nature and he would record bird voices and listen back to them. And one day when he recorded and was playing it back, he heard a voice. And the voice addressed him in a very familiar name, sort of a pet name that only his family would use. This interested him quite a bit, and he began to record more. He began to get excited about it, and eventually it caught on. Someone else found out about it, a Dr. Konstantin Radeva, who is from Latvia. And he then went on and recorded 100,000 samples of spirit voices. And a lot of these tests were done in very strict conditions in room that were acoustically shielded, and that there was no way for any voices to be present. So he was the one that sort of put the stamp of authenticity on EVP. And after him, it just continued to grow. In the early 1980s, there was a gentleman named George Meek. He was retired. He was he had a successful career. He actually had a couple of air conditioning patents. And so when he reached a certain age, he decided to retire and to pursue his study of paranormal phenomena, including healing. And in the course of that, he began to meet other people. And one of the most famous moments in instrumental transcommunication, which is abbreviated as the word ITC. If you ever hear that, that's what they're referring to. And ITC began to grow. People began to, I just lost my place in that one item. There was a gentleman that claimed he created a device to be able to communicate directly with spirit, and he was having two-way conversations. It caused quite a stir. And it's one of the things people search for most when they look up instrumental transcommunication. They recorded, I can't remember how many hours, I think it was 10 or 20 hours of two-way conversations between this technician, it was an electronics person, and someone that was in spirit, that was giving them instructions. That was known as Spiricom. So back in the day, which is the early 1980s, there were actually radio stations that were trying to replicate that scenario. There was a press conference that George Meek held, telling the whole world that they had communication with spirits in the afterlife, I guess you'd call it. And that just kicked off a whole series of projects that George Meek led through the Metascience Foundation. A lot of that work is still unpublished. It's still sitting in boxes, laying around, and it needs time and resources to be able to properly pull out all the knowledge that's in it. From there, things began to grow, and that instead of just voices, people began to experiment in their own ways. They would receive faces on TV screens. They would receive messages on computers. This is written text back when computers were very new. So this is the late 80s, early 90s. And each person that did this, they seemed to have like a unique connection. What they did was unique to them. And it wasn't exactly like anyone else's. So there was audio, there was video. And then the movie White Noise came out, which is where I came in. So it's somewhere around 2005. It's a horror movie. So it doesn't do all that well as far as promoting the cause of spirit communication and spiritual evolution. But in the In the DVD extras, Tom and Lisa Butler from the American Association of Electronic Voice Phenomena in the United States, they gave information about electronic voice phenomena and how it was a real phenomena. And from there, it seemed to grow. There was quite a big burst, a growth burst around 2005, 2006. It's also the same period that the ghost shows started to come out on TV a little bit more, which I think we all know doesn't really showcase most of the authentic nature of spirit communication. It's mostly for entertainment. And my personal journey began, and I was inspired by some pioneers in the field. There was one gentleman in Italy who began tuning his radio. This was an old tube radio, and he would sit there and he would tune it with the intent of receiving spirit communication. He started this in the 50s, I believe. If not, it was early 70s. He has transitioned to spirit, but by the time he transitioned, he had been doing it for 30 to 40 years. He got so good at it that they had a center in Italy, and they'd have all these rows of chairs, and people that were invited would come and sit in all these rows. They were looking to hear from their family. And strange one-sentence messages would come through the radio, and they would call out people by name, or they would deliver messages that only the family would know. He's still considered to be one of the most venerable pioneers in instrumental transcommunication. So myself and other people since then have also experimented in radio. And I had success early on, and it was unexpected. And I didn't know what to make of it either. I didn't know how and why it worked. But a lot of experimenters will reach a point to where they've duplicated what the methods they've seen other people do, and then they'll reach a point to where they'll step off and begin to experiment on their own in different ways. Once I began to do that, we discovered that not only can we hear spirit people in sound, we can see them in sound. Now, I know that's an interesting concept to try to explain, but essentially, if I clap my hand, and you saw a video of that big spike when I clap my hand, that would be called a spectrograph. So it's a picture of sound. What's interesting is that when I began to try the experiments, and this is back in 2007, so it's a long time ago, I asked these spirit communicators to if it was a viable method. And I kept trying it, and faces eventually began to appear in the sound. You'll notice there's a common theme as we talk during this interview, and that theme is that when you set the intent on communicating, when you set the intent on creating something specifically, the universe has no choice but to eventually produce what it is you're focusing on. So that's one of the interesting topics on that.
Keith, I understand you want to focus on the faces, on the pictures tonight, rather than so much the voices. And you have a presentation you can share with us?
I do. I'll go ahead and share that now. Please let me know once you can see it.
Yes, it's there.
1 second. Full screen. Okay. You cannot see me, correct?
I can
Is
see
that
what's on the
correct?
slide, but the screen, yeah, that's the main screen.
Okay. So we're going to look at a very basic high level of instrumental transcommunication. As I began to prepare this presentation, it sort of shaped itself. Instrumental transcommunication, it's a long word. Not a lot of people know what it means, which is why you will see some of us attempting to sort of rebrand it as spirit communication that's more along paranormal lines. So ITC is actually a somewhat small field. Okay, we prepared this today for ARE. Of course, I have heard of Edgar Cayce. Anybody that's done research about spirituality certainly has run across Edgar Cayce and his readings, his messages that he brought through while he was laying down most of the time. From here, we'll show an excerpt of one of the questions and answers regarding Edgar Cayce. It was asked if it's possible in this physical body to communicate with anyone who has passed into the spirit world. The answer was essentially that once we continue our life into the next place after this physical life, there are a lot of people that are basically close to us in vibration that have the ability to be able to communicate with us. That's essentially the message. So chapter 1, I broke this down into who, what, why, when, and how. So electronic voice phenomena, we already covered that, but essentially that's what kicked everything off. That was the first true discovery in the digital age that led to where we are today and the pictures that you will see here in a minute. It's essentially unexplained voices. Now, what the public usually would have you believe, at least entertainment industry, is that ghosts are hard to find, or that you need to be at a haunted location to communicate with spirit. That is not the case. You can do it from anywhere, anytime, any place. Instrumental transcommunication is, as Lynne said, communicating with spirits using technology. So what happened was they named electronic voice phenomena, but then once it started to branch out into different technologies, there's an individual named Ernst Sinkowski who was a physicist. So he coined the term instrumental transcommunication, essentially meaning we're communicating across a border using instruments. Chapter 2, when? As we described previously, there have been recordings of spirit voices prior to 1959. However, 1959 was when Friedrich Jürgensen worked with it enough to be able to bring it into the public eye. It's been 64 years since he did that. And there's not an exact number on it, but at least hundreds of thousands, if not at least 1 million people have recorded spirit voices. It's very common, and it's not even questionable as to if it's a real thing. It is a real thing. Let's see. Now here, notice at the bottom, I say the difference between the instrumental transcommunication and paranormal field in general is the people that work in instrumental transcommunication do it from a sort of relationship with people in spirit that are interested in the same thing, establishing a connection, communicating across dimension. Oh, and this is when we get into our pioneers. Now, I did not cover all of them, and the list grows exhaustive after a period of time, but we'll start out with the most well-known ones. Jürgensen is known as the father of ABP because he was the first one to actually bring it into the light, the public eye. And then Dr. Konstantin Radiva has a very well-known name in instrumental transcommunication because first he went at this phenomena with everything he had, and he recorded 100,000 samples. He legitimized it. He did studies and tests, and he even communicated back to this dimension after he died. There are multiple telephone calls between him, host, death, and people here that he had known and was working with. What's interesting about these two first gentlemen, Friedrich Jürgensen and Konstantin Radiva, is that they both spoke more than two languages. And the reason why I say it's interesting is because when spirits would provide messages to them through their recordings, they would often be in multiple languages. So a sentence could start out in English, switch to French, and change to Spanish. And so that is a very important skill set that they had that seemed to assist them quite a bit. This is the German physicist who took quite an interest in instrumental transcommunication. He's the one that coined the term instrumental transcommunication. And he is now also on the other side. A lot of these pioneers have transitioned and are now continuing their life elsewhere. George Meek is a very well-known name. Had it not been for Meek, I'm not sure we would have a lot of the history we have of instrumental transcommunication. As I said, he had a successful career with air conditioning patents, and I'm not sure what else he did. I just know that once he retired, he went full on into research. He traveled to Brazil and researched healers. If it was supernatural or paranormal or esoteric, he was into it. And he's the one that founded the Metascience Foundation. And we have inherited that from him. So it's come full circle. And we still have a lot of that information unpublished. Bill O'Neill is the gentleman that was the electronics, and he was the one that created the Spiritcom device and claimed to have communication with spirits back in probably 1979, 81, somewhere in that range. The picture is a little pixelated because it's quite old. They led to an increase in ITC. So anytime someone researches ITC, they will usually run across Spiritcom. Spiritcom is very controversial, and for good reason. We know that the intentions were good, but there's a lot of information that still needs to come out. And unfortunately, the one issue or the one challenge is that Bill O'Neill never recorded on the VHS with himself facing the camera while he was talking to the spirits. To this day, people still build Spiritcom devices and use Spiritcom techniques. The premise was kind of simple. Take musical notes, choose them selectively, and then transmit it through a radio signal, and then receive it on a radio signal, hoping that the spirit people would change the tones in the radio frequency. Sarah Estep is an original pioneer in the sense that she created the first association for electronic voice phenomena in the United States. She was successful with that for quite a few years, and it was the communication between her and the other pioneers that led to resonance and was quite successful. Mr. Bocci, we already discussed. He's very unique. I haven't seen anybody duplicate exactly what he was doing. It's interesting that there are also ties to physical mediumship. Now, we're not going to branch out into physical mediumship, but there are ties between physical mediumship and instrumental transcommunication. What does that mean? It means that we all have an energy field. Our thoughts, our desires, our spiritual evolution all creates an energy field around us. And spirit communicators are able to use this energy field. In Mr. Bocci's case, he actually would have objects fall from nowhere, from the sky, from the ceiling, in broad daylight, and they would fall down on his shoulder, or flowers would simply appear while a group of guests was sitting, waiting for a message for the loved ones from the radio. And what I mean is physically actually materialize out of nowhere and just fall from the sky where there's no place for it to come from. And that's important to notice. Raymond Cass was another researcher from, well, he was English, obviously. I do know that after a period of time, he began to experiment with radio up in the air band, so airplanes and whatnot. Mr. Hans Otto Koenig, to my knowledge, is still actively practicing. He had an advantage in the sense that he is an engineer. And so he has been building electronics to be able to communicate with spirit now for, I don't know how many years, but probably about 40 at least. He's been on TV multiple times. Currently, he is working with another individual, a lady who helps him, and they have group circles where everybody sits around and sort of like a seance, but not exactly. It's important because I'm going to mention it again. Mark Macy, picture's a little pixelated. Mark Macy became aware of everything that was going on in the world. He met George Meek, and he then took it upon himself with the assistance of a gentleman from Germany named Rolf Dietmar Erhardt. I hope I pronounced that correct. And they began the first website, which is called worlditc.org. It is still up and in existence today, and we're here to help ensure that it stays in existence. There are very long, detailed descriptions of everything that was occurring in the late 80s, early 90s, and it's thanks to Mr. Mark Macy. He's still currently active. He's putting out newsletters, mostly philosophical and have to do with our spiritual evolution and communication with spirit. Dr. Annabella Cardoso is known for her work with radio. I believe she established contact with a group called Time Stream. So there was actually a specific group of people in another time, another place that would communicate with her through her radio. She was influential because the radio that she used for those experiments, I have one. And I followed her example and the example of Marcello Bacci for my experiments. Klaus Schreiber, not a very good picture of him, but this gentleman, this was very interesting. He was one of the first to get pictures. And so the easiest way to describe it is he pointed a camera at a TV, but instead of just recording on the camera, he fed it back into the TV. So it created a feedback loop. He would actually go close to his camera and he would move his hands and his energy like this, kind of like you would do in Reiki. And as a result, faces would appear on screen. The really interesting thing about him is he would dub a VHS tape, copy it from one VHS tape to another. And after he did that a number of times, a face that he received would actually become clearer. Maggie and Jules Harsh-Fishbach, they are both also still around, still spreading knowledge in relation to instrumental transcommunication. They had some very unique contacts, also via radio and special devices. Tom and Lisa Butler took over the Association of Electronic Voice Phenomena after Sarah Estep. They continued on. Back in the day, it was the official forum for people to gather if they wanted to support each other and listen to audio samples, etc. After a while, that grew into instrumental transcommunication, so they changed the name, and they are still supporting the field today. Sonia Rinaldi is well known. She's in Brazil. She has been at this a long time also. A lot of these people are 30 plus years, and she works with images and audio. And now we'll take a little switch into the modern day. And this isn't modern, this is still 2000s, but this is the birth of, if you've ever heard the word spirit box, ghost box, Frank's box, any of that stuff, it was this guy. And so he was into electronics also. And he found that by providing spirit random energy through tuning a radio, they would be able to produce their voices. He was very influential. He is now on the other side also, as is this next gentleman. He also did work with radio and electronics. Both of them I had communication with back then. There are a lot of people that we skipped because I simply need more time to be more thorough. Okay, let's get into the hows. We're actually getting to the good part here in a second. So how do people communicate with spirit using electronics? The most common ways are to record audio, as we described. There are a lot of different ways to do it. Some people use a digital handheld voice recorder, or they use the phone. A lot of people are taking pictures of water in a bowl. I know it sounds silly, but you'll see in a minute that it's actually not that silly. Pictures of smoke, fog, mist, or vapor are easy because people will create the contrast in a background. Say, for example, vapor. And if they have a black backdrop and they have white vapor appearing in front of it, it gives enough contrast for you to be able to see any spirit communicators that are showing their face. Or you could watch a live experiment stream. We started live streaming spirit voices and faces back in 2008. That's how long we've been doing it. We just haven't really taken a lot of time to market. You know, we've been focused on our own lives. What are the requirements for spirit communication? This is important because we want to be sure that everybody's aware that you don't need to be a special person with a distinctive educational background. You don't need to have a degree. Those things may be helpful in your career and work with instrumental transcommunication, but they're not necessary. So the things that I described right here, an open mind. First of all, you have to be able to flex as you learn and understand and be able to break out of your old mental patterns. The intent, desire to communicate is actually number one, and it's mentioned many times among spirit communicators. So you want to communicate, somebody there wants to communicate, and you're already halfway there because of that. Self-education on history and ethics. This is because you shouldn't just jump into it. That's like you shouldn't drive a car without some study and taking a test. People really shouldn't just jump into paranormal items without educating themselves. Persistence. As I stated, a lot of these people that have these results have been doing this 20, 30, or 40 years. Protection is not something I'll expand upon a lot. I just know that it goes in hand with the next item, mental hygiene. In order to communicate with spirit, you need to be grounded. Your mind needs to be grounded and open. Fear can have negative effects on these types of communication. It will be amplified. So whatever you put out there into the universe is what's going to be amplified and returned, which is why I've listed the recommendations of what is necessary. Last chapter before examples, why? So there are many reasons why people experiment with ITC. The most common is to contact a deceased family member. Now, I'm not going to say that everybody has success in the way that they want, but I can say that anybody that does their research and is persistent, they will find that there is so much information, it's unbelievable. Spirit communicators have told us that they are to help us to understand the universe we live in, but there's a catch. It's sort of like the prime directive with extraterrestrials, I think, in the sense that they can't just pop through and fix all of our problems for us. We still need to evolve and understand. You know, we need to discover the science behind why does it work? Why does it exist? How can we improve upon it? What does it mean to us? And here we get to the samples. My screen is rather large, so I'm hoping you can see this properly. This is our first picture by a gentleman in Australia. Pictures here. I just want to check in with you. Lynne, can you still see?
Yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. This is another gentleman named Patrick. He is using vapor, such as from a vape pen or a one of those little things that smell good that elicit fog or smoke. This is one of my first pictures of a face in sound back in 2007. This is dry ice. And the point of this is to demonstrate that there are many different ways. This picture is from a gentleman in Italy. He has a very small mini TV. It's not super small. It's inside this little suitcase. He set up a feedback loop, and the pictures that you see here are amazing. He also sits with people in a group regularly. So they'll have events. Everybody sits around. They have whatever their structure is that's similar to a seance. By seance, I mean when people would sit together and try to commune or communicate with spirit. They'll sing and they'll do different things with energy to get the energy to the appropriate place for physical phenomena to occur. He's still working with us today. That's a picture back from a long time ago, not very clear, but it's an example of smoke with a black backdrop. The picture is by Bruce Halliday, and he indicates he's using a vape method. Here's another picture of a face in sound. It's not that easy to see. Face in sound has actually been quite difficult, and even though it's been worked with for now about 17 years, it still has not been vetted or reproduced as much as we would like it to be. Here's the gentleman again, Orion Silver Star. As I said before, he's been at it for a long time. All the pictures you see here on the right are simply some type of object with water in it. You stir the water or you shine light on the water and you anticipate and request communication. And this is the output. Now, not everybody will have results as good as what you see here. It takes time, practice, and persistence. Some people will have better results than others. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard of AI. The reason why I bring it up is not to discuss what it is, but to tell you that this picture here in the middle on the far left is the original. So what Orion has done is he's taken it and he's run his original picture from water. He's run it through a program that actually cleared it up. And so this picture you're looking at was recorded in water, just a bowl of water, which is crazy. I need to find out who this picture is because I've been saving it and I don't know who it is yet, but I'm going to find out because there are more than one person. There is more than one person experimenting with this type of method. This is one of the examples of faces in sound. Not to get too far off here, but since we confirmed that we can see spirit faces in sound, we can actually take white noise in a computer and make it turbulent. In that turbulence, when combined with my desire to be able to see their faces and their desire to be able to produce them, you can see real live faces in real time on a computer with no radio. Here's another picture by Catherine Ward. There are at least 4 to 5 people that I see that get pretty good pictures using various methods. And that just tells us that it's something to do with their energy. It's something to do maybe sometimes with a little bit of technical skill, but most of this is not technical. They're just taking the picture. Here's another face and sound. Don't know if you can see that. It's actually one of the first. I know it's not that much to look at, but it was a big discovery in the sense that it meant, what it means is we can create a million different ways to communicate with spirit. There's no limits. If we believe it can be done and we try it out, the universe will answer with the results. This is Orion Silver Star again. That's his handle he goes by, Mr. Jeffrey Green in Australia. Here's another picture by Patrick. On the left is the original. On the right is most likely an AI enhancement of the original. On the right here, you'll see one of my better pictures of faces and sound. And it was actually from a radio in the Netherlands, a radio tower. So I listened to static from the Netherlands and was able to receive pictures like this one. There was an organization in France that's still active today. They have many pictures and they use vapor. They use laser lights, a special, what do I call it? Special boxed area, a little mini room where they record pictures. And they've been doing this for well over a decade, probably at least 15 years. And this is in mist. Here's another one of their pictures. Very good examples. Here's another picture from Marco Luzzatto in Italy. This is using a TV. He actually takes sound, I believe, and he mixes it in his own way. And that is the outcome. Here's him actually, oh, we can't see it. Up in this is him giving a presentation in Italy. I wanted to show that just to show that it is real and people are aware. It's an old picture from Cold Fog in 2007. Again, we were live streaming Spirit Faces in 2007. And the video was slowed down so that you could see each picture. Chapter 6, we're pretty much done now. So you can visit our website, which is the community and forum. Our YouTube channel has a lot of stuff in it. The original ITC website we mentioned is worlditc.org. It's basically a historically preserved website at this point. American Association of so the Association of Transcommunication, they are still and have always been an authority. And we have 2 previous sites before Paranormal that you can visit. If you would like to be up to date on all things spiritual and related to life after death and communication and history, you can sign up for a free weekly email report at Victor Zamet's website. They've been doing that for free for decades. There's a documentary list by Dr. Keith Parsons in the UK. It was a collaboration where he did the work, we posted the videos. He has a lot. So you could go down a rabbit hole watching his videos. Paranormalstudy.com has a lot of history of ITC and other things related to paranormal. Sandra Champlain has a YouTube channel, which has done very well. I think I don't know how many interviews, she's done at least 600 by this point. And of course, Paranormal Live Experiment streams. What I mean by that is there are always multiple live streams that you can listen to that are coming from computers here at my house that don't use radios or anything like that. And that is the end. And I would like to thank you very much for viewing that presentation. I'll stop sharing. Thank you.
That's quite a story. I mean, the fact that this has been going on for so long and that there's been so much proof and that George Meeks back in the day actually held a press conference. And yet most people don't have any idea that this is happening.
This is true. I mean, there's 2 sides to this. One is that it's well established that Wikipedia is shall we say managed or influenced heavily by skeptics. The other is not everybody gets good result doing instrumental transcommunication. It remains elusive. Like the pictures I just showed, there's some of the best that are out there in the last 20 years. It takes a lot of effort. But I would say that a lot of us do feel that it's kind of a crime for people to not know. But I think one of the challenges is there's a lot of emotions when it comes to this type of work for most people, because the reasoning behind a lot of them working with it is the loss of a loved one. And so that has an impact on how seriously the field is taken.
The other thing that is striking to me is that on the one hand, there's so much technology involved. It's a very left brain thing. Many of the people are very highly technical, but it's also true that in order to enhance, in order to get good results, it seems like the people working with this have to have certain qualities almost of like mediumship themselves. Would you say that? It's almost that they have to be able, well, you did say they have to sort of generate a field that that seems to enhance or enable the spirits to come through.
It does. Now, the challenge there is on one hand, we're trying to let everybody know that anybody can do this, in the sense that we can all evolve. You might not be have as good results as someone else, but everybody's able to do it. It is true that some people that have technical ability, myself included, have taken them and used them in this field to be able to create new things. However, nobody should ever be deterred from thinking that they're unable to do it. My experience, I've had a lot of readings from mediums through the years. I have a lot of personal experience with all the different methods. And I will say that you don't want anybody to be discouraged thinking that it takes a special ability. Though it is clear that some people do seem to have better results using their specific methods that they created, that they evolved. For example, it's not necessarily just technology. It could be, you could be good at writing a book. You could be good at organizing something. These are all necessary skills. And but there does seem to be a component that if you build it, just like anything else in life, right? If you train enough, and the training is doing experiments or evolving, then it's inevitable that you will progress.
Could you tell us what a day of experimentation with ITC might be like?
Sure. A day with experimentation for me is a lot different than most people, in the sense that I pick up my phone, I press a button. When I press that button, it's one of the live streams, which anybody in the world can do, by the way. When I press that button, they know I'm wanting to hear them. By they, I mean spirit communicators, the people that are influencing my experiments as well as everyone else's. They seem to know an awful lot about our environment. They seem to know about what makes us tick, our emotions, what's going on in our lives, our families, our jobs, things in that nature. And the majority of what I hear is actually, it's just people talking. It's just people talking about all kinds of stuff. So while a lot of people may think that a lot of the communication is directly to the person doing the recording, I would say that over time, we're going to find that that's actually not the case. Sometimes it is, but the technology is getting good enough now that you can just sit there and listen to spirit people talking 24 hours a day. The problem is they're all talking at once. And so that's that's the energy thing that we're finding challenging. But I won't get into the newer technology that we're using yet, but it's inevitable that we will be able to hear spirit people. And I don't know if it will be able to be blocked. But I think it's good that we advance in it slowly or at a decent rate.
You think it's good that we advance slowly because?
I think it's sort of like the atomic bomb. We look back now and we talk about the atomic bomb. You hear the words Oppenheimer all the time, and we all know it. We all know that it produced some good things and it produced some bad things. And I think there are organizations out there actually trying to build devices to communicate with spirits. They spent a lot of money to work with mediums to create devices to where they're able to get a yes/no response from spirit people. Problem is, it's too slow. By the time they get in, sort of like a Ouija board, by the time they get the answer, it's just not practical yet. They envision spirit being able to type through the computer.
Hmm.
And that's something else I also see. One of the things I originally thought of was if we can hear spirit in sound, right? And if we can see them in sound, what's preventing us from creating television? And the answer is nothing. So I would say that we need to progress slowly because, first of all, it's such a fringe area when you start to get that deep that you need to have moral support, people around you, so that you're able to distinguish and stay connected to this reality while venturing into the other one. I think that's just a good practice all around. But I'm sure there are people that if they knew how to do it, they would take the idea and they will do this and they'll exploit it immediately for just commercial gain. I'm not against using it, creating devices to help people, but um, the day's going to come. The day of commercial is going to come. It's not that far off.
Hmm.
So that comes with a lot of responsibilities. Will more people be committing suicides? Will more people be doing bad things because they feel that they don't have to pay for it in this life? I mean, all kinds of crazy things can happen, which I probably can't even really comprehend at the moment.
Speaking of that, are you concerned that the entities that you're contacting, that they might be, some of them being negative, or might be telling you things that are not good for you to hear, or anything of that nature? You did mention protection there.
That's a great question. So a lot of experimenters say that they hear cuss words and that they hear other things that don't indicate that all the spirits that want to communicate are necessarily helpful. I would say that in the beginning, when I listened to audio, there were times when I was concerned, but I found over a period of time that most of it was a reflection of my mind. Meaning back in the day, I used to smoke cigarettes. And so I would hear things such as, you need to stop smoking. So now what I'm trying to get at with that is, so we know if our thoughts are creating this energy field, whatever we're thinking of is part of the energy field. And so if that's what we're sending out, that's what's going to come back magnified. So in my personal experience, I have not had any negative audio experience from any spirit people. I think, now I'm not going to say it doesn't exist. By all means, I'm certain that, it exists, but part of the mental hygiene is learning to not be afraid. If you're not afraid, then nothing has any control over you. And so once you begin, and that's why the education is important. You got to read the history. You got to read, why does it work? It could be, I mean, I think ITC is at odds with religion, of course, as many things can be. So people may have a challenge with that. But in short, I'll say that what you get out what you put in. So I think there's two reasons for negative paranormal experiences, or maybe three. The first is that it's a negative person on the other end, the spirit side. The second is it could be a reflection of the thoughts of the experimenter. And the third would be it's the energy that they've built up over a period of time, and that constitutes what their energetic aura is. So I'm going to say if 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 you're not afraid, then you can't be afraid. That's the sort of thing. And if you are not open to receiving that type of communication, then you may be able to circumvent that by improving your spiritual and mental hygiene. I do also think part of that is because the technology is not there for everyone to use to that degree. I think a lot of it is misunderstood. It's misheard. But there is no one size fits all for that answer. I think it's all of the above.
Well, I know that you see this whole project or this whole activity as being something that would eventually benefit humanity. And you, if I understand correctly, you see it as people on this side of the veil, so to speak, working with teams on the other side of the veil to do things that would benefit humanity. So those ideals that you bring to it, it seems to me that's part of the energy field that would either, that would attract certain kinds of spirits.
Most definitely. Another great question. So we've probably heard there are people that claim to hear from famous personalities. I can tell you that Nikola Tesla is quite popular in the sense that his name, at least at a minimum, has been heard extensively by many different people, myself included. And there are a lot of different messages through mediums that indicate that there is a hierarchy, that once you're not in this physical dimension, there's still a hierarchy of spiritual powers. There's still a structure. There's still someone in charge. There's still someone doing their tasks to fulfill the betterment of humanity. And I would say that the other thing that's interesting is I do a lot of pictures, and I've been seeing the same people now for 17 years. Do I know these people? To my knowledge, but I know their faces. So it became obvious after a period of time, they're clearly a spirit team or someone that is at least close in vibration up to myself, that they're able to connect with me, essentially.
So you've kind of formed relationships with spirits on the other side. You feel like you have.
I would say that, yes. I mean, it depends on the person. In my case, when I first started doing experiments, I said, let me go have a couple readings, because I'd never had one. I went on eBay, actually. I had 3 different readings from 3 different people. They were just short written readings. And granted, they may have had my birth date, or they may have had something astrological to be able to refer to. But all 3 of them indicated to me that sort of my path was to work in this field and share it with people, which is kind of weird because it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in some degree. Is it the chicken or the egg? Did I create it, or is it because someone told me, did I create it and then now it exists? But all I can say is that 3 separate people had interlocking information to where I knew it was real. And then my experiments demonstrated to me over a period of time that that's what I'll do. I mean, I'm not really good at interviews. I'm not good at a lot of the stuff I do. And when I was younger, usually you see the older people, the people that are seasoned doing it, and you think, that's great. Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? One day you are that older, sometimes seasoned person, and you realize that, hey, if nobody else is doing it, somebody's got to do it. So if you have the knowledge, you sort of have a certain responsibility to at least make an attempt to help other people in whatever that means to them.
Do you think that you said that the spirits on the other side, they're not going to come through and solve all our problems for us, but do you see a future where there's really much more cooperation of sharing of information and working on the problems we have here in teams with both, people on this side and people on that side?
I do. There's some information from George Meek and the Metascience Foundation. There's some information that came through mediums. And according to them, there's a lot of people, everyone from Jesus to JFK, that certain high-profile names use their abilities that they were known for in this earth lifetime to be able to further that cause. Actually, can you help get me back on track? Can you rephrase that question?
we're talking about the possibility in the future of, I think those of us who have been reading on this, we kind of sense that people on the other side have been trying to help us throughout the millennia in the ways that were available to them. But I'm questioning whether the ITC would really allow much more like a teamwork between groups of people on this side, groups of people on that side, really getting together and, you know, and doing projects together and doing it consciously, not like they're influencing us on the unconscious level, but we're working together consciously. Is that sort of where you picture it going?
I do. George Meek, back in 1986, he actually had written out this whole plan of how this group of luminaries on the other side were going to come through his device, and they were going to set up like a teletype. It was just a machine that would just be spitting out data. It would be spitting out stuff about humanity, sciences, government, law, all these different things. So apparently there is that desire there. I don't know how far we're going to get in that, how quickly, because I think there are certain powers that be presently that may not want us to make it to that level. But people in spirit are definitely willing and able to work with us. We just have to work through it with them.
Fascinating. So can you say again how people can contact you or how they can get involved with the organization, or
Sure.
how they can do something themselves?
Will do. I'm pretty easy to reach. You can just email info@veranormal.com, or my name, Keith, @veranormal.com. The online community, it's there. I'm not present there all the time. But if you want to go talk to other people that are similar, you can head there and join the forum. We're easy to find. They could find us anywhere. That's probably the best.
This has been quite illuminating, really. I mean, it opens up so many possibilities, some of which are, as you say, a little bit, almost a little scary, and others are really inspiring. So
I think that comes with any advancement.
Thank you for joining us and sharing your information. And Hercules, how are we doing?
We're doing great. I think we have like a minute more if you'd like to use it.
Well, if people are interested in connecting with the ARE of New York, our website is www.edgarcaycenyc.org, and I'll spell that because people have trouble spelling Cayce. So it's EDGARCAYCENYC.org. And if they want to contact us directly, they can use our webmail, which is info@edgarcaycenyc.org. And just to be on the safe side, I'm going to spell that again. Info, INFO, at symbol EDGARCAYCENYC.org. Well, it's really amazing to know that there's that all of this has been going on for so long, and so much of it, and most of us don't know about it. So I think I'm going to want to keep tabs a little bit more on what you're doing, Keith, and what other people in the paranormal community are doing in the future.
We appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much for having me, and it'll get better as we go.
Thank you so much, Keith. And
thanks to both of you for a great show, and thanks to our wonderful audience. This should be on YouTube by tomorrow afternoon.
Thank you, Hercules.
Okay, thank you.